That was insane. Starship takes to the skies for a fourth time. How did it do? Booster 11 aces its ascent. Did it come back down again? Starship re-enters. How was this still flying? And Starship isn't the only long-awaited test flight to lift off. My name is Felix. Welcome to What About It? Let's dive right in. Starship updates. The launch finally happened and I still can't wrap my head around it. Barely 3 months have passed since IFT3 and it was all worth it. Flight 4 delivered. This launch was crazy. Stick around, you won't regret it. Follow me. This has been a crazy week at Starbase. We got so much information from the launch. Let's return to the start of it all to give you an overview and the right knowledge to understand what followed. Back to the 4th of June, just 2 days prior to the planned launch. The vehicles were destacked once again. Many were surprised to even see this last-minute destack. Except this time the destack was rather short-lived and the prototypes were back together in no time at all. This is one of the main advantages of Mechazilla. You can just destack real quick, something absolutely impossible on other rockets. The main reason for this destack was fortunately just final flight prep work. Yep, that is it, no need to worry. Workers were seen swarming Ship 29 during this period and even Booster 11 saw some action. The most likely reason is that SpaceX was simply doing some final inspections before launch. Pretty simple but super important. It didn't seem like SpaceX was paying much attention to the heat tiles during this period either. This might seem odd as it appeared they were still missing 2 tiles near the base of the vehicle. So what about those 2 missing tiles then? After all, testing the heat shield was the main goal for this flight. Why leave holes in it? Well, we were asking the same question and we realized that this might just be on purpose. That's right, it appears that SpaceX opted to leave these areas unprotected for the actual test flight. But why risk it? After all, Musk stated recently Starship likely wouldn't survive with even a single missing tile, right? SpaceX wanted to test before jumping to conclusions. As a matter of fact, Elon confirmed this himself prior to the flight when answering the question of why those tiles were bare. He simply stated experiments. Later, SpaceX stated that these were intentionally left off to test if losing a tile really was a mission-ending scenario. The location of these missing tiles was important as well. They were located in the ship's engine skirt where if the steel actually did melt, no systems would be damaged that would influence where the Starship came down. Along with these 2 empty spaces, there was another tile that had appeared thinner than the others. Weird. This is likely for a similar reason to the missing tiles on the aft section. To test different tile technologies likely to reduce weight on future models. There is also the possibility that this tile only appears to be thinner. This could be due to the removal of the insulation blanket beneath that respective tile. This blanket goes between the bare stainless steel and the tile to insulate it during re-entry. It's possible that the blanket was not needed at all and that removing it could save weight on future prototypes. All of these options are in the realm of possibility. What do you think? Is this odd thin tile something that we'll be seeing on future prototypes? Is it even a tile or is it mere insulation? Tell me what you think down below in the comment section. The FAA also kept its promise. A license was handed over to SpaceX that could in theory be reused a couple of times. SpaceX will have an easy time for the next launch. They received this permit just a day and a half before the flight on the afternoon of the 4th. Just in the nick of time. Starship 29 and Booster 11 were then subsequently stacked the following day for what would be the final time. And on the morning of the 6th at approximately 7 o'clock local, fueling began on the ship just 50 minutes before T0. We were standing ready at Raptor Roost just 3 miles away from the pad and right on the edge of the exclusion zone. As planned, SpaceX followed up with the booster and in no time at all, the most advanced rocket ever built sat fully fueled on the pad ready for launch yet again. Absolutely incredible to see live and then it happened. Liftoff. Starship successfully took to the skies under the power of 33 Raptor engines yet again. The noise at our viewing location was incredible. The entire building started shaking from shock waves coming down on us. For the first few seconds everything looked great, then just 3 seconds into flight we had our first sign of trouble. An engine was out. Fortunately, with 33 engines, losing one isn't that big of a deal. Even Falcon 9 has lost engines on ascent and still made it to space. This engine was also on the outer ring, which means it wouldn't be relit for landing maneuvers, only the inner ones can be relit. It is possible this engine was damaged by the massive shockwaves of launch, as can be seen here, getting reflected right back to the rocket. Thankfully, the 32 remaining engines burned flawlessly until MECO or most engine cut off. This proved Super Heavy's ability to hoist a Starship into space yet again for the 3rd time in a row. It's an incredible booster. This burn was then followed by yet another spectacular display of hot staging. The booster throttled down to just the center 3 of its 33 Raptor engines as the ship lit its 6 engines and lifted itself away. Yes! This event was followed by a successful flip and boost back of booster 11. If you remember back on flight 3, the boost back maneuver only appeared successful at first glance. Upon further review, it was discovered that 7 engines shut down early, which led to a crazy asymmetrical shutdown sequence. This is not good. The improvements SpaceX said they had made apparently worked. The booster showed no sign of early shutdown, with all engines shutting down perfectly and on schedule, sending the booster on its way to a bath in the Gulf of Mexico. But before it started its return, Booster 11 had one more thing left to do. As some of you may remember, SpaceX actually made the decision to ditch the hot staging ring before landing, likely to save weight and improve aerodynamics and center of mass. The booster wasn't originally designed to have this extra weight on top. This could have led to instability. In other words, having the hot staging ring on top could have actually been why Booster 10 had trouble steering on IFT-3. During the live stream, SpaceX also confirmed what we had known already.
The hot stage jettison is an off-nominal procedure that we're using as a temporary way to reduce the weight of the vehicle for its water landing today.
This was only a temporary solution. The upgraded Block 2 boosters will have the ring as a part of the design from the start, making sure every part of Starship is fully and rapidly reusable. After the ring was jettisoned, we were treated to an amazing view of the top of the booster, where you can see a grid fin actuator hard at work bringing this metallic beast down through the atmosphere. Look at these vibrations, there's a lot of force at work here. And this time they were able to keep the booster stable. This is a drastic improvement from IFT-3, where the grid fins weren't able to keep Booster 10 steady on descent. The booster fell for just over 3 minutes, appearing stable the whole way down until the landing burn. Did all 13 of the inner landing engines relight? Not quite, yet another engine was out. And clearly it didn't go out peacefully, as chunks of debris can be seen flying past the camera. For this engine, it could be the case that once again a filter blockage caused this failure, but if that is the case, unlike last time, it was isolated to this one engine. Surely this would be the end of Booster 11. There is no way it could possibly...
That landing burn just begun, and you can see the water below.
Oh my gosh, it actually did it. This is insane. On their 4th attempt, SpaceX successfully showed they could safely land the largest and most powerful rocket booster ever built. Perfect. Next step, reuse, right? Hold your Raptors. This flight wasn't perfect. They might have a few things to iron out, but they did it. Wow. Now for the real question, when will they actually attempt a catch? Well, it appears that in preparation for this, the booster wasn't the only thing SpaceX had simulating a catch, as simultaneously back at Starbase we saw this. The tower came to life with the arms moving as though they were catching a booster. But it wasn't just the tower, we now know they will also be activating the water suppression system during the booster catch. So did the virtual tower landing work? Was the booster's dramatic landing precise enough? While we have no way of verifying whether it was successful or not, it did look like all systems operated. As I mentioned a moment ago, we saw both a successful boost back and a successful landing burn. This means that as long as the booster was at the right latitude and longitude, it was most likely successful at landing virtually on the chopsticks. This is a terribly hard maneuver, however, and it requires a crazy amount of precision, which means there is not much room for error. But it appears that despite all the anomalies, it reached a point where Musk could post this. Now this could be Musk jumping the gun, but it goes to show that at least he was confident with what he saw at the time. Now we wait for the craziness that will hopefully be Flight 5's booster landing. But this flight wasn't just about the booster. The ship's re-entry was arguably the goal of this flight, but before that, have you ever felt the unsettling presence of an online stalker and solicitor?
Hey, is this on?
Robocalls, spam mail, and targeted advertising? Each time you browse the web, data brokers snatch up more of your personal info, eager to sell it off. But what if one of these brokers slips up? What if your data is stolen and left to roam wild? You'd better find a good fix, because the mess from those data leaks never gets cleaned up. Governments may grant you the right to delete your data, but with it scattered across the internet, getting rid of it all could take ages. And let's face it, the internet never forgets, right? That's where Incogni steps in. They are here to shield your privacy by reaching out to data brokers on your behalf, getting your personal info removed all automatically. Just sign up, grant permission, and let Incogni do the rest. They are so confident in their service that they offer a 30-day money-back guarantee complete with success reports. However, Incogni goes beyond mere privacy protection. It's about safeguarding your credibility too. As a news host, my reputation stands as the cornerstone of my profession, and I cannot afford to let information tarnish it. With Incogni, precision is guaranteed, shielding my reputation from the malice of trolls. Simply sign up, grant permission, and witness how it restores your peace of mind. Regain your privacy with Incogni. Use code Felix at the link below and get 60% off an annual plan. And now for one of the most amazing sequences of events I have ever seen. Let's take a look at Ship 29, where we left it. After it hot staged, the ship burned all 6 of its engines all the way to near orbit. Hot staging was flawless, as I mentioned before, meaning we could once again see a fuel dump. This was similar to the fuel dump that caused a failure on Flight 2, but let's face it, SpaceX is long past those days now. Starship began its suborbital coast. This means that they did it again. SpaceX has now successfully proven that the last flight wasn't just luck. For the second time in a row, SpaceX's Starship, the largest and most powerful rocket ever built, made it to space going at near orbital velocities. Now, because the lowest point in Starship's path was inside of Earth's atmosphere, this flight could not have maintained a constant orbit around our blue globe. This was on purpose. If all was lost, the ship would still re-enter fast and at a predicted position. Energy is the important thing here, however, as even though it was on a suborbital trajectory, the speed and most importantly the heat would be almost identical to an orbital return. On the last flight, some of you may recall a certain dance Ship 28 decided to put on for us. Ship 28 decided to play ballerina. A slow spin caused by malfunctioning roll thruster valves that were clogged during flight. When it was time to re-enter the atmosphere, Ship 28's heat shield was facing away from the heat due to this spin. It left the unprotected back of the ship exposed to the fiery plasma of re-entry. The ship did not survive, and it means that the heat shield didn't get a good test either. And that is what it got this time, as it appears the roll problem was fixed. As Ship 29 approached the oncoming heat, its heat shield faced the correct direction. For the first time, SpaceX was able to fully test this key piece of reusability. But before I talk about that, did you know we've looked into our channel metrics and there are over 2 million returning monthly viewers who have not subscribed yet? Help us improve the channel even further by double checking that you've hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our updates. While you're at it, give us a like and become a wise supporter for exclusive SpaceX updates. With it, you get access to daily Starbase photo galleries, including satellite, aerial and ground photos of SpaceX's progress and countless other extras on top. And no matter how much you decide to give, everyone gets the same supporter content and access. You decide what you want to give. Now let's return to the star of the show, Ship 29. We were treated to some absolutely spectacular views of Ship 29 as it impacted the fiery plasma of re-entry. This stage of the flight appeared to go flawlessly. The ship continued through the storm of intense heat at a very shallow angle all the way past the 65-kilometer mark. If you remember back to Flight 3, this is where the ship lost signal and began breaking up inside of Earth's atmosphere. However, Ship 29 seemed hardly fazed by the extreme heat of re-entry. That is until approximately 57 kilometers above the Indian Ocean, when this flight took a catastrophic turn. At this point, one of the forward flaps at the top of the upper stage began to melt. Yep, you heard that right. Starship does not have an ablative heat shield that erodes away over time. Any sparks flying are a signal of something being wrong. The plasma from the compressed gas most likely got through a missing tile into the delicate hinge of the flap itself, as you can see here. About a quarter of the flap melted away as more and more tiles went flying. As a fun fact, these flaps were originally meant for Ship 21, which never flew. It's possible that more than one flap was affected by this, but as of yet, we can only confirm that a single flap was damaged. So that was the end then, right? Nope, not at all. After a short communication blackout, the views were back. The ship was still traveling along even as the right forward flap tore itself apart. This came as a shock to everyone, including the SpaceX live broadcasters. A part of one flap may have not made it through re-entry, but the bulk of the vehicle did. And in no time at all, the red glow on the underbelly of the 9-meter diameter ship began to die down. That means that Starship made it successfully through the biggest goal of the mission: peak re-entry heating achieved. While the answer is yes, with the flap damaged, SpaceX will undoubtedly want to retry this aspect again with better heat protection around the flaps. That's what this is all about, finding the right recipe for a Starship heat shield. Regardless, SpaceX has gotten one massive step closer to recovering Starship and Super Heavy. But wait, don't go anywhere just yet. That wasn't all, as Honey Badger over here refused to die. Take a look at the impossible. I bet you didn't think Ship 29 would go any farther after half of it disintegrated, did you? Well, frankly, neither did I. But there it was, traveling towards the Indian Ocean. After all, it's just a flap wound. Let's see how far this went. If you remember from our flight timeline video, SpaceX was planning to propulsively land the upper stage on the water in addition to the booster. This was a change that was incorporated into this flight compared to Flight 3. This meant that the next step would be the iconic flip we haven't seen since the high-altitude flight tests. In order to do that, they had to restart 3 of the Sea Level Raptor engines and gimbal them to one side. After that, one engine shuts down, leaving 2 Raptors to perform the landing burn. If all went well, the ship would touch down upright before tipping over into the water. Well, if you can grasp what I just explained, then you already have a pretty good understanding of how this maneuver went. The flip appeared to be highly successful, and the ship soon throttled down. This was followed by touchdown. So, was it successful? While it is impossible to know due to camera issues, we have some clues. After the touchdown, we saw this view of Ship 29 sinking beneath the waves. This means that the ship successfully landed on the water, but I want to know more. Let's say that Starship instead attempted to land on something a little less forgiving than water, something more like concrete. When cross-referencing with the legendary flight of SN15, the similarities become apparent. There are some differences, however, such as the amount of engines required to land the craft. On SN15, only 2 engines were used to slow it down, but on Ship 29, all 3 Sea Level Raptors were used. This is most likely because of the massive weight differences between the vehicles. Ship 29 has much more hardware installed, such as extra engines and an entire heat shield. But when we do compare it to the final flight of the suborbital campaign, we gain some insight into the amount of success this prototype had. For one, the landing burn began at precisely the same time. The touchdown also was surprisingly similar to the touchdown of SN15, with the velocity reaching 0 at what seems like the exact same time. It's possible that if the ship landed on the pad, it would have had a rod, very similar to serial number 10, but anything more explosive is rather unlikely. This is an incredible outcome, as some, including myself, were skeptical that Starship would even make it through re-entry. But to see Starship not only ace that test, but also return to Earth in one piece is an incredible milestone for SpaceX. Go SpaceX, go Starship! Honey Badger, aka Ship 29, proved to be quite the resilient ship, and it also proved that Starship recovery is a feasible plan. That was quite the show, so make sure to show Honey Badger and the entire SpaceX team some appreciation in the comments below. I know they read them. What a fantastic success, no matter what traditional media headlines you might have seen already. These people have no clue. Now let's take a breath from Flight 4 and look at a mission that has been in development for even longer. Because if this week wasn't already packed enough with Starship Flight 4, Starliner finally decided to go liner. After 2 scrubbed launches, some were expecting yet again to hear a hold called out at Starliner's mission control. But the countdown kept going. We made it to T-4 minutes when Starliner had scrubbed on the last attempt, but no scrub occurred, with T-0 getting closer and closer until it finally happened.
1, ignition, and liftoff of Starliner and Atlas V.
On the 5th of June 2024, after 14 years in development, Starliner has now finally accomplished its goal of flying humans to space. We watched the launch live with you on our 24/7 live stream, which you can find in our channel right now. There we watched live as the launch went perfectly, adding one more success to the near flawless record of the Atlas V. This also marked the 100th flight of this beautiful rocket and the return of people to the top of an Atlas rocket for the first time in over 60 years. On board the capsule were astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams, ready for a 9-day trip to the International Space Station. Despite the launch being flawless, the same couldn't be said for Boeing's Starliner, which almost immediately began to experience helium leaks. Now, for those who have kept up with Starliner, you may be thinking they already knew about that on the ground and determined it was not severe enough to fix. But while on orbit, 2 additional leaks were found on Starliner's propulsion system. Fortunately, Mission Control was able to mitigate the problem by blocking off the valves, but that wasn't the end of the problems. As Starliner began its approach to the International Space Station, another problem occurred. 5 thrusters went out, causing Starliner to hold position. Eventually, NASA was able to bring back 4 of the 5 thrusters, and after a quite tense docking on June 6th at 12:34 Central Time, Starliner finally made it safely to the International Space Station. Let's hear a collective sigh of relief. They made it and they are safe. Assuming everything from here on goes as planned, Starliner will now finally be able to start flying crews to space, both for NASA's Commercial Crew Program and private customers like Blue Origin alike. This is excellent news, as the US is on the way to having not 1 but 2 crew-capable vehicles flying at the same time. In fact, if you count Orion, then it should actually be 3 soon. This will provide redundancy, as if something goes wrong on one of them, there is always another one to pick up the slack. If Starliner was an Amazon product, I'd love to read the reviews. Write one in the comments. That's it for today. Remember to smash the like button, subscribe for more awesome content. This is what fuels the algorithm and it helps us immensely. Check out our epic shirts in your favorite Space Nerd store. A link is in the description. And if you want to train your space IQ even further, watch this video next to continue your journey. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next episode. Yes, I love you. The booster throttled down to just the center three. Perfectly on halala. This means that they did it again. I'm spitting.